Welcome back to Quit, Build, Mature. Hope you're having a great Tuesday. And on Tuesdays, I like to share a word of encouragement with you. And so today, the verse that we're going to be using that's a springboard to the narrative is 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 17 to 18. 2 Corinthians 4, 17 to 18. The Apostle Paul wrote this: "For our momentary light affliction is producing for us an absolutely incomparable eternal weight of glory. So, we do not focus on what is seen, we focus on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal." After Nebuchadnezzar died, the Medes and Persians took over. Under King Darius, Daniel's faith and his courage and his obedience to God was once again tested. In the 6th chapter of Daniel, King Darius set up 120 officials to be over his whole kingdom. And then he set up 3 governors to oversee those 120 men. And Daniel was one of those 3 governors. And the king came to know Daniel very well because of his service and because of his wisdom. So the king was thinking about making Daniel only second to him in ruling the kingdom. Well, the other officials and the other 2 governors were extremely jealous of Daniel. So they tried to find something to accuse Daniel of. Well, those men knew they could not find anything against Daniel unless it was something that had to do with the law of his God. So they went to King Darius and they asked him to make a decree that only he was to be worshipped for 30 days. No one could worship or pray to any other god. And if you disobeyed his command, you'd be thrown into a den of lions. Well, these evil men knew that Daniel prayed to his God, and they knew that Daniel would not worship the king. Well, King Darius signed the written ruling, not knowing that it was a trap that these men set up for Daniel. So when Daniel learned the decree was signed, he went home, and he knew that the officials wanted to find him guilty of breaking the king's command, so that they could accuse him in front of the king. But he still went to his upstairs room, knelt down in front of an open window. He prayed and he thanked God 3 times that day, like he had done every day since he was a young boy. Well, the men watched to see what Daniel would do, and they saw him praying. Oh, they were so happy. They found him breaking the king's edict. So they immediately went to King Darius and told him that Daniel had not obeyed his decree, and he did not worship the king. With great joy, they told the king that Daniel still prayed to his God 3 times a day. Well, when the king heard this, he was sad, but he was also very upset. He really didn't want to punish Daniel because he respected the man. But those men reminded the king that when he made a decree, that decree could not be changed. So, even though King Darius did not want to do this, he sent his servants to bring Daniel back to him. And the king ordered his men to throw Daniel into a den of lions. Well, with great uncertainty, the king went up and spoke to Daniel and told him, "Your God will deliver you." Then the king went back to his palace, but he couldn't eat, he couldn't sleep, he couldn't drink anything. He really did not want Daniel to die. He liked Daniel, he respected Daniel. He hoped Daniel would still be alive. Well, we read in Daniel 6:19, "At the first light of dawn, the king got up and he hurried to the lion's den." And then it says in verse 20 that the king asked, "Daniel, Has your God been able to rescue you from the lions? And Daniel told the king, and remember, Daniel's still down in the den of lions. And Daniel told the king in verse 22 of Daniel 6, my God sent his angel, and he shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me. Well, the king was totally amazed, and he was filled with great joy that the lions had not devoured Daniel. Well, the king ordered to have Daniel lifted up out of the lion's den. God saved Daniel from the lions because Daniel was innocent before God. So King Darius ordered that all the men who had accused Daniel, he ordered that they be thrown into the lion's den. And it's interesting to see how hungry those lions were, because in chapter 6, verse 24, it says, the men had not reached the bottom of the den before the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. King Darius praised God, and this time he gave another decree. He decreed that everyone in his kingdom should worship the God of Daniel. Then Daniel was returned to his position, and he had riches and power during the reign of King Darius, and also during the reign of King Cyrus the Persian. So Daniel lived out the rest of his life in Babylon. He was not able to return back to his home in Judah, but God continued to bless him, and he found favor with the kings of that time in history. And God used Daniel as a prophet. He gave him dreams and he gave him visions about what would happen to kingdoms that would arise, that would come to power until God's Messiah, Jesus, was born. Some key principles I think that you and I need to learn today in the 21st century from this Daniel narrative that can encourage you. First, remember, God is sovereign and God is faithful. God has the ultimate power and authority over earthly rulers and over natural forces like lions. God is always faithful to keep and fulfill his promises, and he has the ability to deliver those who trust him. Second principle that I think it's important for us to see and to apply to our lives is be faithful and trust God. Ask God to help you not compromise your faith, even if you're threatened with death. We need to remain steadfast in our biblical beliefs, because God rewards those who are faithful to him even as they face adversity. It is so very important that we live a life that pleases God and not to please humans. Third, there is power in prayer. Prayer is absolutely crucial as a way for us to communicate with God and as a way for us to seek God's guidance and to seek God's protection. We need to understand that God is willing to hear the prayers and answer the prayers of his faithful servants. A fourth principle is that Daniel foreshadowed Jesus. Just like Daniel, Jesus was totally innocent, but yet condemned to death. God, delivering Daniel from the lion's den, foreshadowed Jesus' resurrection and his victory over death being pulled out of the tomb after 3 days. So today, I encourage you, be brave, be courageous. No matter what, stand firm in your faith in God. Be a light in your world, because your faith and your godly actions can definitely impact the people in your world. But for that to happen, you and I need to trust God's protection, because he is able to protect, and he is able to deliver those who fully trust him. So I encourage you today, fully trust him. Find his truth, seek his path, and stay true to his word. Guys, thanks for sharing a few moments with me here today. Hope you have a wonderful Tuesday, and may God continue to bless us as we seek his face. Take care.